So, can you guys hear me? Is anyone? You guys can unmute yourself if you want, so that I can see you. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for me to keep talking alone by myself. Is anyone willing to unmute themselves? Yeah, there you go. Hey, so I don't know how this is going to work because they did not tell me how this is going to work, which is weird. Just message one of them and figure this out. All right, never mind. We'll get started. So I'll be talking to you guys about the field of neuroscience. So I am a cognitive neuroscientist. It's really hard to come up with a term for what I am because neuroscience is not really one field as such. It comprises of a lot of different fields which focus on very diverse problems, as you'll see. But I'll try to give you a sense of what the entire field is about. So let's get started. So neuroscience is really a field which studies nervous systems. So if you see this diagram on the screen, I guess all of you know what that is. You might have seen this at some point in your school. That's the human nervous system. So neuroscience begins here. You need to understand how signals are conveyed from one part of the body to another part of the body, and how that leads to all the exciting behavior we can do, moving our hands, dancing, singing, everything. Everything relies on neural signals that are passing from one part of the body to another. So what exactly is happening? What kind of signals are being passed through? How are these signals being passed through? Who is passing these signals? So to answer these questions, you need to zoom into this picture. So for example, if we zoom into one part of this nervous system, which is the human brain, you might see something like this. So this is what we call a neural microcircuit. So it's basically, you will see cells, these dots, the black dots you see are cells, like any other cell, like a muscle cell or a skin cell. And then the tendrils you see are nerve fibers. You can call them nerve fibers at this point. And that is how they connect with each other. And then they pass information to each other. And a single neuron looks something like this. So you have the cell body. I don't think you can see my cursor, but oh, never mind. So on the bottom side, you see the small bright dot. That's the cell body. That's all. That is all of the cell body. And then everything else you see are nerve fibers. So these extremely complicated creatures, these are single cells. They are connected to each other, and these microcircuits, after a lot of these coming together, lead to extremely interesting behavior, like kids jumping, kids feeling emotions. Everything is computed with these circuits. So the question which neuroscience is really in the business of answering is how these neurons work. One, how signals are propagated between neurons. How can we characterize the connectivity of such a system? So which neurons communicate with which other neurons, and how all of this comes together and drives behavior. And not just behavior, it also underlies all the phenomenon that we are fascinated by. For example, consciousness. If you say to somebody, I'm aware right now, I feel aware, I can see an apple, the apple is red, and it actually feels like something to see an apple. All these assertions, all these awareness, all these percepts, they are all grounded in these circuits. So it is very interesting as a field because it really gets to the heart of who we are. It's not about understanding the world, it's really about understanding ourselves. So it's really easy to convince people that neuroscience is important, usually. So I don't need to go there, but let's get you into some examples which might convince you that this is something that we need to study. So what do you get by studying these systems? Why do we need to even care about these beyond just medical stuff? So for example, you could have applications like mind controlled prosthetic limbs. Let's say you lose an arm. You can have a robotic arm. Now you have to ask yourself, how does our arm move? So you get signals from your brain. There's a part of the brain called the motor cortex, which is on the top of your head. That's where signals which provide information to the hand as to how it should move, that's where those signals are computed. So when you don't have an arm, there's basically no way for your brain to communicate with this robotic arm. So one way to do it is basically hook up your robotic arm to your spinal cord, because that's where you have signals coming from your brain. On the other hand, what you can do is you can completely forego all those connections and you can just put an implant on your motor cortex. And this has been done. You can put an implant on your motor cortex and just decode information from there. It's all just neurons communicating with each other. But in neuroscience, we have figured out like what those signals mean. So but with that knowledge, you can decode what the brain is intending to do. It wants to move the hand up, you want to move the hand left, and communicate this information to all the motors and sensors in the robotic arm. And that's how you can move a robotic arm. And so it's not a one-way street. It's not just that you can move the robotic arm just by thinking, but if you have touch sensors on the robotic arm, which will give you some pressure readings, in the same way your skin will give you pressure readings if you put your thumb against your finger. You can get pressure readings from the robotic arm, and you can directly push them into your somatosensory cortex, which is next to the motor cortex. And then you can actually feel whatever that robotic arm is touching. So this is how, because it's very important for you to have the perception of touch to grab something. If I grab a bottle, it's really hard to grab a bottle if you don't know how much weight it has, how much force you need to apply given the weight it has. If it's a very light bottle, if you press too hard, it might break. So you need that sense of touch to actually do something with that arm. So this two-way street is something that has been demonstrated already in humans who have lost their limbs. It's not as science fiction like as you might think. So we don't have Iron Man like prosthetics, but we are getting there. So this is like one of the applications you can have by understanding what brain signals mean, what these neurons are talking to each other. If you figure that out, you can do things like these. So this is just about the motor cortex, which controls motion, which is very easy. But you could imagine in the future, if neuroscience figures out the basis of all thought, of all feelings, of all emotions, you could basically put a chip in there and figure those things out just by reading activity from your brain without asking the person what they want. You could understand what they want. And this is what Elon Musk will tell you he wants to do. But it's a very long time before that will happen. Another example of the same kind is, for example, restoring vision in the blind. So in this case, a group from the Netherlands, what they did is they took a monkey, they blindfolded the monkey, they put a camera on its head. So that's the artificial eye now. It's like the third eye, let's say. And so what they do is they take the video inputs from that camera and they convert it into the kind of signals our brain is used to seeing from our eyes, because the eyes send electrical impulses into our brain. And that is how we perceive the world. So you just completely override that entire system going all the way to the brain and just directly put a chip on top of the visual cortex. So on the backside of the brain, that's where all visual processing happens. and just send information through there directly. And then the monkey can actually see the object without actually opening its eyes. It can actually see, like it will see exactly as if it had opened its eyes. So these are some very, they might seem simple. These are extremely complex things to achieve. But when you talk about them, they're very simple. But it's good that they're simple because they can make people appreciate what the field wants to achieve. And these are just glimpses of what we will achieve in the future. So I hope that is sufficient to kind of convince you of the fun in the field. Now let's talk about practical stuff, because that is what this workshop is about. So let's say you want to get into this field. So what kind of skills do you need to work in this field, to build these kinds of contraptions or machines which can, give us Iron Man one day or something like that? So there are multiple questions the field is concerned about, right? Like if you want to know how a neuron works, so the picture on the rightmost side on the first slide, then you need to know how chemicals work, how chemical reactions happen, because neurons are really cells. So you need to know cell biology. You need to know that cells have a membrane, cells have a DNA, they have an RNA, and how those things interact. How do cells realize that they need to exchange chemicals with the outside to survive? Like all these things are studied in biology. So you need knowledge about biology. You also need knowledge about chemistry, knowledge from chemistry, in the sense that you need to know how chemical reactions happen, because that's how molecules interact with each other. And then, of course, you need physics, because you might not know this, and if you're in school right now, but the cell membrane, when you have any sort of chemicals being exchanged within a cell to outside the cell, this is a quantum mechanical process. I don't know how many of you are aware of this word quantum mechanics, but it's something you'll study in physics when you go to university. It's basically a very spooky way of explaining how the world works. But that kind of knowledge is very crucial to understanding how these cells actually work. So, okay, if you are somebody interested in biology, then you can do neurobiology. That's the subfield of neuroscience which studies like how does a neuron work. But maybe you're not interested in how a neuron works. You want to do some cool stuff. For example, what can groups of neurons do? If I put like 100 neurons together, if I push in some signals through that system, what kind of outputs can I get? So for example, I will that my hand shall move. Now that will, that kind of my willing it is some sort of signals in the brain which are not in the motor cortex, is the rest of the brain. So what kind of signal needs to be sent to the motor cortex? So the group of neurons in motor cortex can convert it into the signals necessary for contracting the muscles in my arm, which will move my hand. So what kind of transformations of signals can these neurons do? This is a very important question, and if you want to figure out how humans work, and for this you need all the quantitative fields, because this is really a question of systems engineering or nonlinear dynamics. So you have physics, you get mathematics. These two fields are extremely important in you having the ability to actually solve equations, and in you having the ability to actually think about structures which are important to reason about these groups of neurons doing things. And then you have machine learning, which you might have heard about right now. And machine learning is a subpart of AI. And machine learning deals with artificial neural networks. And it's a very nice way of simulating an artificial brain, a very small brain, like 100 neurons. The brain has 100 billion neurons, but you can take 100 neurons and artificially simulate them and try to figure out what kind of interesting behavior this system can show. This gives you some idea about what parts of the brain might be doing. Then you have the very relevant question to neuroscience, which is what do groups of neurons actually do? And there's what can they do? That's a very mathematical framework, so to say. You're basically giving a list of things the system can do, but what do they actually do? And that is studied in psychology and cognitive science. So that's basically the study of human behavior or animal behavior. So it's a list of behaviors that you observe, even a hierarchy of behaviors, and then you can relate them back to how neuron computations lead to these behaviors. So as you can see, like the background skills necessary to actually work in this field consider all of STEM in a way. But it's not necessarily that not necessary that you need to do all of them to work in neuroscience. It all depends on what problem you want to choose. But now you're most probably all of you, I mean, none of you are master students at this point. So you're not specialized enough in any field. So at this point, my advice would be you need a background in a quant heavy field, which is something like physics or mathematics, even biology, but if it's like genetics and stuff like that, where you need to think a lot in mathematical terms. That's extremely important, because then you'll be able to reason about any neural process you want. And the most important thing is you need a deep interest in biological neural circuits. Like you really need to care about human behavior. If you don't care about human behavior, you should go to artificial intelligence, because that's where they care about all possible behaviors. But if you really care about human behavior, and the human brain is insanely complex, none of our AI agents right now come anywhere close to even like pieces of cortex in terms of the flexibility they have in their computations. So it is a mammoth problem by itself, and that's why this field exists independent of machine learning. So you need to have an interest in those problems, and then combined with your background in quant heavy fields, you will succeed in this field. There is no way you won't be able to succeed. So then we come to job opportunities. What can you do? Let's say you have a PhD in neuroscience, or let's say you do a master's in neuroscience. What can you do with this? So one very trivial, I wouldn't call it trivial, but a very straightforward career path is becoming a professor. So you do a master's, you do a PhD in neuroscience, then you do a postdoctoral research fellowship, and then you apply for professorship, and then you just stay in academia and not just teach, but actually do research in the field. Another thing to do is you can become a research scientist. So you can become a research scientist in machine learning, neuroscience, and brain-computer interfaces. Brain-computer interfaces are a mix of ML and neuroscience at this point. So there's a lot of companies nowadays, because of ML, explosion in ML, there's a lot of companies nowadays which will hire you as research scientists. So you don't need to teach, basically. It's not a university. It's an actual company, but it's interested in fundamental research. So you have Neuralink. This is Elon Musk's pet child. You have Google DeepMind, which is Google's division for doing machine learning, but they also care about neuroscience. Then you have the Human Brain Project and the Allen Institute. These are extremely large consortiums where you can work in neuroscience too. So here you will be paid very well. You will have all possible facilities you require, and it's a very nice environment to work in. You'll meet like-minded people, and you'll have fun, lots of fun. And then if at some point you're like, okay, I don't want to work in neuroscience anymore, but I have all this background of whatever statistical, I can do statistics, I can extract information from huge data sets. And that's exactly what a data scientist is, or a data analyst. So you can easily apply for data science jobs if you really don't want to do neuroscience later. And the best part is, because people ask me a lot, like, okay, you become a researcher, you spend 10 years of your life doing this. So do you at least get paid for all this effort? And the answer is yes. I mean, outside India, it's quite easy to get paid whatever 20 lakhs plus every year easily, like as you begin into your career. So money is not a concern at all. If you really want to do research in this field, it's a booming field right now, because there's a lot of stuff that's not done. It's a very young field. So there's a lot to be done, and therefore there's a lot of money, because there's a lot of interest too. And in India, if you want to do research in neuroscience, there's a few institutes. There's the National Center for Biological Sciences at IISc. There's a Cognitive Science Center at IIT Gandhinagar. Then the National Brain Research Center at Gurgaon. And then a few professors at TIFR. So there are some opportunities, but I would really recommend you get out of the country if you want to do research in neuroscience, because the infrastructure we have here is not sufficient yet. I guess in the next 5-10 years, we'll have sufficient infrastructure to be here and do research. But currently, if you really want to be on the forefront of the field, if you have nothing tying you down, you should definitely try going to Europe, going to the US, and getting exposure there. And then you can come back if you want. Yeah, so in closing, I would say that a lot of science fiction stuff, whatever you might have seen in movies like mind control machines, you just think and a machine does things for you. This is going to become a reality in this century. There is no doubt about it. Like we are getting very close to it now. It's just that the engineering part has not caught up yet. So we don't have robotic arms which are as good as human arms and stuff. But we'll get there by the end of the century. We have a lot of time. So if you want to become a part, if you need a slice of this action, you need to get in now. I mean, you are very well situated. By the time you guys want to choose a field in university, it's the perfect time to get into this field. And I would also suggest that you use your privilege to your advantage. If you're here, you're basically in the top 1% of the country already in terms of the amount of financial resources you have, the amount of freedom you have in terms of what you can choose. So just focus on what your interests are in terms of building things. And that could be even something like building blockchain or building the infrastructure of Bitcoin. And that is all fine. But if you are building things, it is always useful for society. It will also keep you motivated a lot rather than resigning yourself to making quick money. Because the thing is, you are all smart people. You can definitely just, go become traders for a financial firm and earn an insane amount of money that you cannot even imagine being a researcher. But it doesn't really matter, to be honest. At the end of the day, it will be super soul crunching. So if you are somebody who's really interested in fundamental research, just do it, because you do get a lot of money at this point and you will be completely satisfied and it will be very useful to society. If you want to read more about like neuroscience stuff, I would suggest this book. It's called Models of the Mind, and it will give you, it's a very easy to read book. You can also read this book even if you are in the 4th grade, but it will give you a nice overview of what the field is about right now. So then you can make better decisions as to if you like what's happening, if you want to get into this action or not. And so I didn't speak about who I am. So I'm Sushrut, of course. I did physics. Then I moved to neuroscience, and now I'll be moving to machine learning. So this is just to tell you that you don't need to even stick to what you do in your bachelor's. You can definitely move around as much as you want, and it is completely fine. Just have a drive. Just focus on things that interest you, and it will all work out fine. And enjoy whatever you do.